Welcome to Premiere number 28. And tonight we'll continue working with the internal map of reality material. And we're going to follow up on last week's introduction to filters. We'll be drilling into that more. Of course, we'll do our 1-minute meditation following this little introduction. So we'll be looking at types of filters, and this is the process now where you begin to recognize, that we are filtering our reality, and we need to for survival reasons. And now we're going to the next sort of level of detail, step B, that we have specific ways of filtering, and these are, generally referred to as filter types. And people implement, sometimes people will have 2 or 3 favorite filters that they'll use, and you may have a friend, family member, and you know how they're going to filter out what you say or what you do or what they see or what they hear, how they're going to filter it, and and you almost can predict it. And yes, you can predict it. But the good thing is that once you identify what your filters are, you can identify whether they're advantageous, whether they help you achieve your goals in life, or whether they're actually preventing you from going further. So you want to identify the filters that you use that are powerful, and then rely on them more, use them more, and then identify those filters that are maybe not as resourceful and may lead you off into areas that take you away from your goal. And with those filters, you can either discard them and put in new filters, or you can just change them. Okay? And then finally, we'll take a look at the concept of why we're doing this. Why are you watching these videos? Why are you practicing? And why practice is important. Okay? The benefits of regular practice. So relax and get ready for your 1-minute meditation, and we will do that now. Now, filters are, I would say, a major part of your internal map of reality. And as I've been saying all along, and that probably deserves to be repeated, is that everything that you do in your day-to-day, moment-to-moment existence is in some way indicated in your map. Now, this is true for the great majority of people. They function almost automatically depending on the map. Now, there are people like yourselves who are studying about the internal workings of their map and are building the ability to function above or with and in some cases without their internal map of reality. So perhaps our ultimate goal here in this course is to get you to the point where you're not just aware of your map, but you can live with it and begin to use the power of your internal map. And hopefully, with practice, you can develop the skills to live without depending on your map. You can be map independent. So let's look at some specific filters. And here's one that I will be mentioning several times, and it's your timeline, the way you filter your perception of time. And I'll do some bonus content on this. But let's look at one aspect of your timeline filter. It's called your direction finder. Now, with this aspect of your timeline, you are going to be looking at the future to determine what direction you make or what decisions you make. Or you might be someone who looks to your past. Are you someone who drives their car by looking in the rearview mirror a lot or all the time? Well, you can imagine what that's like if you're in a car with someone and the person who's driving is constantly looking in their rearview mirror, like a lot. You might begin to get nervous, like what the heck are they looking at? It's good to look occasionally at what's behind you, but you probably want someone who's looking ahead of the car in front. So this direction filter, a big part of it is identifying whether you are a person who's driving their car, their life, their map, based on what they have seen or have done in the past? Or are you a person who is looking towards the future and aiming their life towards what they want? Now, this is kind of important because there are pluses and minuses to both approach. If you're a person who's constantly looking at the future in terms of assessing how they are doing, well, you might run into this common problem. If you're looking at an object, say the mountains, and you're driving along the prairies, and you're trying to assess your progress by the horizon, well, the horizon is always in front of you. You will never, ever reach the horizon. So some people get frustrated with their life goals if they're constantly looking at the future and trying to measure the progress towards something off in the distance. Conversely, those people who are constantly looking at the past might easily get misdirected. You cannot drive and stay on the road by looking at the past. You might lose your direction if you're constantly focused on what has happened in the past, both negative and positive. This is not a negative or positive type of thing. It's basically you need to be able to look to the past to see how you've progressed, and you need to look to the future to see where you need to correct and adjust and aim. Think of an airplane pilot. They are constantly correcting the plane up and down and to the left and back and side in all four dimensions of their traveling, how they can position the airplane. They don't just lock it in one position, they're constantly adjusting it. Similarly, if you think of someone driving a bicycle, they learn the art of adjusting. Now, the key to being able to adjust is whether or not you are aware of what's happening in the future. So one aspect of the timeline is identify whether you are fixated on the future or whether you're fixated on the past. One interesting little thing that we can do is I usually get people to point in the direction that they think the future is. Point to where they think the future is and point to where they think the past is. Do you think the future is in front of you and the past is behind you? Or do you think your future is to your right and the past is to the left? Or is it reversed? Do you think your past is on the right and your future is on the left? I've had people who thought their future was really an up arrow towards the sky that pointed up. And I said, point to your future. And they pointed up, which is, that's fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with the direction that you think your future is, but it does have an impact on how you're processing your map. And this will be a good bonus topic to talk about that. So right now, you point to where you think your future is. Again, there's no right or wrong with this. It's just what you think. Do you think your future is dead ahead in front of you, or do you think it's to one side or behind you? That obviously indicates where you think your past is. So if you think your future is to your right, you automatically think your past is to your left. If you think your future is to the front, you think your past is to the back. Now, you might think your future is behind you. Well, I haven't really run into that too often. But here's another example of how this can work out. If you think your future is in front of you, it's like you're sitting in a car driving, isn't it? It's like you're looking ahead and you're driving the car towards your future, right? Or if you think your future is towards your left or to your right, it's like you're looking at it on a widescreen projection. Your future is a timeline in front of you that you can look at and evaluate. Now, these two approaches have an impact on how you process information. And we'll be going into this later. But for the time being, figure out for you, where is the future? In front of you, or to your left or right, or actually up above you? Now, just to wrap up this thing on the timeline for now, we want to identify your orientation, and this affects how you plan things. So if you're oriented to be looking ahead of you to the future rather than behind you to the past, this will affect how you set your goals and how you do your planning. You probably heard people in sessions or meetings, or you may even be the type of person who says, well, let's do this such that this does not happen again. Okay? They want to make preparations so things don't happen like they did in the past. Or you might be the type of person or know people who say, listen, if we want to get to this skill level, or we want to be able to accomplish this in the future, these are the things we need to do today to be able to do that tomorrow. Okay? Think about it, and let's move on. Now here's one, the associated filter. We've talked about this a little bit, looking at this. When you are associated, you are in the crowd. You're like one of those people in that group. When you're disassociated, you're looking at it from a distance and you're like in the helicopter looking down. This is a measure of how important something is to you. So when you're listening to someone talk and they're describing something that they're doing or will do or have done, do they describe it such that they are associated, closely attached to it, or are they describing it as if they're looking at it from a distance? This distance is associated with whether or not you are emotionally involved in the content. Okay. There's some other aspects of associated, dissociated when it comes to processing information. Some people will process information such that it's just data. It has no more significance than, a number. Other people will process information in the reality such that they feel compelled to act on it. So information can be just data, or information can be a call to action. This is directly related to how associated you are with the information you're receiving. So as input comes into your reality, if you're very associated, you may actually begin to act on it immediately. If you're disassociated, you may only just observe and record the information and not necessarily act. Here's another one which we see in our lives, the frequency filter. And there's a lot of different dimensions to the frequency filter. So people will repeat things at some frequency level. Maybe they may only repeat something seldom, once in a blue moon. Or they might repeat something frequently to the point where they will do it automatically prior to doing anything. And I think about my mother, that before she went and did anything of any significance, there was a certain posture, there was a certain phrase, there was a certain kind of little routine she did automatically before she did anything of any level of importance. Another example that's coming to my mind is a baseball pitcher. So if you watch a pitcher, they will do something repeatedly the same way every time they throw a pitch, unless it's not an important pitch. If they're just, casually throwing something to the first baseman or throwing something back to the catcher, they may not do their ritual. But if it's an important pitch, if it's a money pitch, they will summon up their ritual and they'll do it every time. Some people become compulsive about their rituals. The classic one is the obsessive compulsive behavior of washing hands. And today, with the foolishness that's going on, people have become obsessed with cleanliness and washing hands and cleaning and scrubbing things. And to the point that it can become a detriment. There are specific oils and protection on your skin. There's antibodies, there's protection, oils and antibodies that protect you from invasion on your skin. If you wash them off, then you no longer have those oils, you no longer have those antibodies. So frequency can be a matter of whether you do something on a ritualistic basis or seldom. This is very important to notice in terms of your perception of how powerful it is. There's another dimension to the frequency filter. You may notice that some people need to be convinced of something several times, and typically it will be a number of times. You might know someone that you have to tell them something 3 or 4 times in different ways before they go, oh, okay, I'll do it. Some people, you just need to say, I think it'd be really great if we did X, Y, and Z. And they'll look at you and go, oh, yeah, that is great. Let's do it. They don't need to have a set number of influential statements to act. So again, in dealing with whether or not you act on something or whether or not you just treat it as data and leave it untouched or unaction, if you're motivated to act, it may be that you haven't had the convincer enough times to act. Let's look at another example of this. Say you're a salesperson and you're trying to convince someone to buy an item. Now, assuming that you can see them live and in person, you would be really a much better salesman if you could determine whether they have a frequency filter and how many times they need to hear something before they act. And how would you do that? Well, you might try them with something very, 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 very simple and to see how many times you have to repeat it before they go and actually do it. Now, a really good salesman will ask a person questions and will ask them certain things and will observe whether or not they have to be asked once, twice, 3 times. Some people have to be asked 4 times. Okay? The typical, though, it's 2 or 3. And if you find someone that is a 2 or 3 convincer, they need to be convinced 2 times or 3 times, that's your clue. 1 time isn't going to do it. 2 times isn't going to do it. But that 3rd will. There's some other dimensions in here, but I think it's important. Now, with this frequency one, let's go back to the baseball pitcher. these frequencies, these rituals and repeated behaviors are important to the individual. If you change or make it difficult for the person to do their rituals, you may cause them some issues, okay? Think about it, and let's leave that one for now, but this is a quite diverse and interesting filter. Here's one that we can observe quite easily, the solution finder. Are you a type of person who finds solutions? Or are you the type of person who finds problems? You might be a helper. You might be the type of person who will, wherever they are, they'll identify the problem and say, oh, that's going to be a problem because this, that, and the other thing, constantly, and, really trying to help. Or you could be the type of helper who will find solutions. You may constantly saying, well, if you did this, you'll be able to get it. Or, the person who's always has their hand up, I want to do this. Now, the problem finder portion of this solution filter can be associated with procrastination. So people who find problems typically will find reasons not to do something. Okay, but this can also work with people who are the solution side of it. They will find a solution as if, well, it's already been done. Oh, that's already happened. And again, it becomes a way of procrastinating. It becomes an obstruction. So what we'll want to do with this filter, the solution filter, is identify how we use it, identify how we use all the filters, but this one in particular, because if you are trying to achieve something particular in your life, well then, which way would it be best that you're looking and filtering your reality? Are you filtering out the solutions and only seeing the problems? Or are you filtering out the problems and only seeing the solutions? You probably might be more skillful if you can flip back and forth. And this is a little creative game that you can do on your own. You can go and spend a few minutes and identify all the problems with something. Say there's something you want to do. Identify all the problems. What are all the reasons this can't happen? Identify them all. Then flip it and become the solution finder and find out all the ways that you can make this happen. So you can have fun with this filter, and again, this is one that's easy to observe. So that's the exercise 8 that I want you to work on. And again, I'll try to get out a small video on it to focus more on it. But pick one of these filters or find one that you can design on your own and try to identify in yourself how you use these different filters. Okay? Or you can look at people and see if you can see people using these different filters. Look for someone who's using the solution filter. Look for someone who's using the timeline filter. Look for someone using the disassociated association filter. Okay? Look for these filters in your day-to-day. Well, that's it for section 2. We're going to go on for section 3 and then looking at how to activate these filters to your advantage, how to spruce up filters and take a filter that may be lackluster and spiff it up and make it a power filter. We're doing that in part 3. So, and what I want to convey to you that what you are embarking on is you're learning a skill. It's a very high level skill. And I know many people will present meditation as a rather simplistic thing, but believe me, it is an art and it is a very sophisticated skill. So with that in mind, I want to talk about the stages of learning and the steps that I think are key for you at this stage is learning that there's an initial stage And then you'll move into a stage where you'll be starting to integrate this knowledge into your daily life to a point where it will become a habit. And then finally, when you reach a certain level, your skills will become totally subconscious in nature, and you will just implement them. You will apply them unconsciously through your subconscious mind power. Okay, well, let's take a look at meditation as a skill. In the very first session in the Intro to Meditation, I indicated that meditation has been around for a long time and that it came from the eastern part of our world and migrated to the European countries and then finally to North America. But the practice of meditation is considered of the highest skill level. And in some parts of the world, if you are seen as a skilled meditator or a meditation instructor, you're considered to be very, very, very highly respected. And the reason is that in some countries, they understand that the most powerful thing that you can learn about is yourself, is your mind. But it takes practice. I want to just refer to learning a skill. And here's a little chart. I know on the upper axis, x-axis, they talk about accumulation of skill points. Think of that as effort. Think of that as time. And as a novice, you might spend very little time, and you might not do any of the things. You might not meditate at all. And I have to admit, when I first started out with learning about this, I didn't meditate as much as I should. I didn't practice as much as I should. But then as I began to see benefits, I began to practice more. And particularly as I began to help others learn it, I began to practice more. And it is directly, it's not. It's more like the traditional hockey stick curve, that as you progress up in terms of skill level, the amount of time you spent increases. Let's look at something that like learning to play an instrument. So this is an example of learning to play a musical instrument such as a piano. And they've broken this down really interesting. If you notice that they looked at, in the far left column, hours per week. And then they start saying that if someone is spending 1 to 2 hours a week, 10 to 20 minutes a day on average, they're not likely to stick with it, and they are probably not likely to succeed. So it's considered not serious. Then as you move up, you see someone who's practicing 3 to 4 hours a week, 20 to 40 minutes. That's where the starting beginner would be. So that says here, a new musician. However, a proper warm-up would not leave much time to really practice. So this would be considered just getting warmed up, but it is a good starting place. So for 2 or 3 times, 3 to 4 times a week, putting in about 20 to 40 minutes in a session, right, that you begin to be considered as progressing. But then you move up to 1 hour per day, 7 days a week. Now you're talking about the minimum amount of time required to learn a musical instrument or an advanced art skill. And I think this would apply to any of the arts, that if you're a really serious painter, really serious singer or guitar player or piano player, you're going to be practicing a minimum of 1 hour a day. But notice what the recommended is. The recommended is 2 hours per day or 10 to 15 hours per week. And I would say that when I began to get serious about doing this, I would be spending a minimum of 2 hours a day on my meditation practice alone. So I would do like a 1 hour meditation and then spend an hour or so going over my material every day. But then when I began to be really serious about it, every day I was doing about 3 hours, not sitting at one time, but I might do an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, and maybe an hour or two in the evening. And if you know anyone who's seriously into any art form, music, they're practicing a lot. Now notice that they say here, for someone doing 3 to 4 hours per day, they're considered serious about their music. They're considered to be a virtuoso. They're beginning to become really someone who could make a living at their art. And then you notice here people who practice 5 hours a day. Now remember, there's 24 hours in a day, so we're talking less than a quarter of a day. So 5 hours a day. Those are the people who reach the top. Those are the people who excel. So I want you to see this chart, and I think it applies to any art form, and I consider meditation an art. And the stages happen similar to this, that in the beginning of wanting to learn meditation, you really don't know what you don't know. And you are unconsciously incompetent. You don't know. And you may hear some of the things from other people and from me in some of the lessons, and it might not twig, it might not make any sense to you, and you may or may not do any of the exercises, but that's okay. At least you're hanging in there, you're watching it. And I did that for a while too. So it's not that I'm saying I started being a real serious practicer for quite some time. I just watched and listened, and something held me. But then you reach a point where you realize, hey, there's more to this than I know. You become conscious of your incompetence. You become aware of what you don't know, and you begin to practice seriously. And at that point, you begin to reach a level of consciously being able to play that guitar or play that piano or sing that song or draw that picture or meditate. You become consciously competent of being able to do your meditative practice. And there are many different forms of meditation practices. I practice on a daily basis 2 or 3 different types of meditation applications. And I'll talk about that if you want. But then through practice and time, you reach the top level, which in this chart, it's calling unconscious competence. But it's what I call being accessing your skill level at the subconscious level. So you begin at the very beginning, which is, let's say we are all here, and you want to be like that child in these pictures here. You want to be curious. You want to play. You want to touch. You want to get involved. And it's through practice and practice that you begin to integrate the material. And initially, you may not even know what the significance is of what you're doing. You may not know that your ability to play with those blocks might lead to someday you being a sculptor. So I'm suggesting that at this stage you begin to build habits of doing your meditation. I've been trying to instill a habit by doing the 1 minute meditation at the beginning of every one of our sessions. I'm making it a habit. You need to make your practice habit. And basically in your life, and this is what the internal map of reality is about, making all your habits resourceful habits. This is the key to your subconscious. It's the habits that will either take you forward or hold you back. It's the habits that have the hidden secret meaning of your power. And if you're around people who are very, very successful, you will notice that they do things without even hesitating. They do it, as the expression is, like water falling off the back of a duck. It just flows through. They do it automatically because they practice and practice and practice. Very seldom do any of these skills get handed to you. I've been fortunate, and a few pieces of knowledge have been handed to me, but the rest I've been had to get down on my hands and knees and scrub the floor. You have to do the work. And by doing the work, you begin to realize what you don't know. And you begin to gain some of that skill internally. And I can't tell you what your skill will be. I can't tell you what you will master. This is unique to each person. You have your own set of library of knowledge inside of you that through practicing your various meditation skills, and I've been hinting at a number of them and also directly pointing to some specific ones, but we're going to dig deeper into it. But it's your practice, not mine, that will take you to the next level. You have to do it yourself. And by doing the exercises and beginning to meditate, things will begin to open for you. No one can do it for you. Well, that's pretty much my positive mental attitude chit-chat for today. And I'm serious about it because you're more than welcome to watch these lessons and to watch them as an observer, being disassociated from the material. And that's perfectly okay. But I really would like you to become fully associated with the material and gain the benefits. And only by trying these things and practicing do you begin to gain the benefits. Okay, see you in the next session.